Hey, deserving listeners, Love is Blind, the reunion. Let's watch.
Could have said that definitely in a more calm and logical way. That said, I don't think I was antagonizing anyone at the barbecue. I don't think I was coming for her. She kept asking me what was wrong with my face.
Yeah, I think Johnny is responding to, I wasn't shaking you up like a Coke bottle. I was just there and you came after me.
Came and sat right next to me and you're like, they're telling lies, and I didn't open my mouth at all. You came straight up into our conversation, inserted yourself in the conversation, sat down, you're like, don't believe what they're saying, it's lies, when I hadn't said a single thing, and then you looked at me and said, you're deceitful.
At first I thought Stacy was talking about the conversation where Uche was making his final arguments in the court of his mind, but she's talking about the conversation where there's Stacy and Izzy that are telling Chris that Johnny is a total piece of crap. It was stronger language than that. So Johnny sat down next to Chris and, yeah, I guess inserted herself into that conversation. So Stacy's claiming, so I don't know, either Stacy has a distortion there or she's just trying to come up with a thing. Yeah, I think Stacy would be totally fine if she just said, look, in the pods, I heard some really nasty things. It really bothered me. And then when I saw Johnny at the barbecue, I let her have it because I had never let her have it. I'd never said anything to her, and it all came out in that moment. And I don't regret a thing. You know, just say that. But to claim that somehow that Johnny provoked Stacy is, you know, it's going a little, but who cares? It's just details.
And I just had a disagreement with Izzy, and I'm like, this doesn't look good. I'm going to go be there for my man. And I don't think me walking up and trying to be there for the guy I'm dating has any issue. And y'all were saying things about me, so I don't know why.
Stacy wasn't saying anything about Chris or about you to Chris. That was a conversation between Chris and I.
Until Stacy came and
well, either way, Izzy was saying some, you know, things that she could defend herself around, that Johnny could defend herself around. Yeah, I guess they're just rekindling their problem together. It is like it was just yesterday, even though it was a year and a half ago. You just think, why are we getting into these details? You just think, you say, well, yeah, maybe we were wrong. I don't know. I was drunk at the time. I don't really remember it. But I think they've seen the scenes. You would just think that Stacy and Izzy watching that scene would have thought, ugh, that, yeah, especially when you look at it, the edit, it was, you know, maybe I went a little too far. You just think there would be some of that in the way that Johnny did. She's like, yeah, I was petty.
Asserted herself.
Stacy was just standing there.
She
even apologized.
I was going to sit by my fiance because I was trying to get away from you.
Okay, we have different perspectives on the situation.
I mean, you were physically outside where I was. I wanted to get out of that environment and be by my fiance. He was with your boyfriend and talking.
And it was true that when Stacy came over, Izzy was in the middle of saying a lot of things to Chris, and Stacy didn't immediately get involved, and it kind of looked like Stacy didn't want to get involved, like she just wanted to change the subject. And then when Johnny came over, then that's when Stacy got into Johnny.
Talking to him,
yeah, so
you came in and opened your mouth and came at me. That is what happened. We can go round and round.
Johnny. We can go round and round, but what we do have.
Right, so Chris gets bulldozed, but he was saying, the two of you were having a conversation with me about Johnny, so Johnny came over, which is fine. It wasn't like we were having a random conversation.
I hope you guys work out, honestly. I'm calling her out on her shit because...
Well, now I'm wondering if they didn't see the show when they were filming their reunion, and now they're going to show them what happened.
Go to Izzy.
Because I just see like hands waving.
We're just trying to understand the story. You know what I'm saying?
Understand? No, they're trying to convince you of a story.
Oh, I think I didn't pick that up. So Chris is saying, if I were trying to go for you, Stacy, I would have gone to Izzy saying, hey, Stacy, why didn't you tell Johnny that you were going for Izzy? That's interesting that I didn't pick that up the first time.
We were there in the pods to know that you're full of shit, so it coincides with the real world that you're still full of shit.
Y'all's stories are conflicting.
Of all the clips to show from the season, I wonder why this one. Is this to throw Stacy and Izzy under the bus? Because I don't think they come out looking great in this situation.
I had empathy for you, and that's why I'm so fired up, is because you're a shit person.
I think I forgot that sentence. I had empathy for you because you're a shit person. What did she say?
Empathy for you, and that's why I'm so fired up, is because you're a shit person.
Oh, she's saying, I had empathy for you, and that's why I'm so angry, because you are a shit person. Okay.
And I feel bad for shedding a damn tear for you.
That's
Okay,
not
well,
true.
number one, she's not a shitty person.
It's just calling shit for shit.
We're just calling you.
I know, like Josh be my boyfriend.
Honey, that's all I stand for.
I got your back
And you
anytime.
got none
This
of
is
that.
not between.
Yeah, and I'm reminded, because after this party, they have a massive fight, Izzy and Stacy, basically about Johnny. At least that's how it begins. And it's just such an interesting dynamic, right? There's so many things that are going on that aren't being said, I think, between Izzy and Stacy particularly.
I want to apologize to you because my delivery was horrible. That is not me. That was way out of character. I was an asshole, and I apologize for that.
Okay, good. I'm not a huge fan of people saying it's out of my character. I think that that is a way to save face. They're basically saying, I was possessed by this weird creature that wasn't me. It's like, it was you. You did that. You made those choices. He could claim that he was intoxicated and that affected things, but he didn't look so, I guess there are different zones of intoxication. I don't know how intoxicated he was, but if you were extremely intoxicated, then yeah, it's hard to identify that person as the same person as when they're sober. But in that zone where he's intoxicated, it's still you're still doing it, particularly how prolonged it was. He had a pretty sizable conversation with Johnny that was definitely in that direction, and then he goes after Chris and is really doing, and then going after Johnny. So if it wasn't you, you'd think at some point you would notice, oh, this isn't me, I need to do something else. But he did apologize, and he said he was an asshole, and that's good. This episode is sponsored by BetterHelp. So I don't know about you, but throughout my day, I have two opposing forces in my mind between what I want to do, like playing a video game or playing with my dogs, and what I should do, like exercise more or eat more fiber or something. As a therapist, I talk with a lot of clients about this inner conflict. Most people think it's all about willpower, even though research demonstrates that willpower doesn't really work. There are a lot of evidence-based techniques that actually work that people don't usually consider, like using behavioral shaping techniques or healing from our relational traumas that keep us stuck internally. Well, one option worth exploring is BetterHelp. If you're thinking of starting therapy, it's worth giving a try. It's entirely online. It's designed to be convenient and suited to your schedule. And also, you can switch therapists at any time at no additional charge. So, make your brain your friend with BetterHelp. Visit betterhelp.com/Kirk today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/Kirk.
But I do not apologize for saying the truth. My delivery just could have been a lot better, and I'm so sorry for that.
Okay.
Well, so he's still being a dick. The claim that he has, he's so sure that, so they still believe that to be true, that Johnny, I wish they would articulate their accusation, because I'm pretty sure, I'm 90% sure that their accusation is that Johnny, played two men and faked being in love with two men to manipulate these two men. That's what they're claiming, right? Because she said the same thing to Izzy, she said the same thing to Chris, or at least Chris. They believe that she manipulated, so let's just say that. They believe that she manipulated Chris by just repeating the same lines, and maybe she meant it with Izzy, but that's not the issue. She manipulated Chris. Well, do we believe, based on everything that's happened, that Johnny was not into Chris? Is that what you're concluding? That she just did not like him at all and was trying to trick him? Because there's another possibility there, right? Particularly given what happened afterwards. So it's weird that and then he says the truth. Well, what truth were you saying? It's true that you thought you heard her say something very similar to Chris and to you. What does that mean, though? It'd be like saying you're a deceitful person because you told one person you loved them and then you told another person later on that you loved them. Well, which one is it? Well, there was a time span there where she had some thoughts. She processed things. She thought about them. Could she have just made it up and had it been fake? Yeah, it's possible, but it didn't look that way. And how would you know? So he claims to know. It's like he's so sure of himself that she is manipulative or fake or tricked Chris, especially now after everything that's happened. It's just, but we can use it as a jumping off point. The word narcissism is thrown around a lot, and in the clinical literature, it can mean a few different things. But one of the things that we use it for is our self-preference. And we are all narcissistic in that we prefer ourselves, which makes sense. We prefer our point of view. We prefer our lives. We prefer our culture. We prefer our thoughts, our feelings. We prefer ourselves. Like a classic example in the research literature is when we're driving down the highway and someone cuts us off, we're like, that person is an asshole. But when we cut someone off, we think, well, there's reasons, there's mitigating circumstance. Even if you just failed to check your blind spot, you would say, well, that's not me. I usually check my blind spot. I'm a good driver. So we frame it completely differently. Someone else, same behavior, asshole. I do it. I'm not an asshole. I just made an innocent mistake. That is narcissistic. It's self-centered. It is preferring the self. It is considering yourself better than other people or holding yourself to a different standard than other people. We all do this. So when we see ourselves doing something that is assholery-ish, then we will try to spin it in a way that will redeem ourselves. But the problem is that denies us the opportunity to learn and to treat other people well such that they won't leave us, right? That's what we're trying to achieve. And so in order to learn and to change and to receive feedback, even if the feedback isn't necessarily coming, you can just learn from experiences. We have to understand our bias and put it aside in times like this. We have to say, okay, well, I think that I'm totally fine. And I think I was an asshole, but I was telling the truth. But I know that there's this cognitive bias. I know that there's this thing of narcissism, that we're all self-centered. And so what is behind that wall of narcissism for me? What would it be? And that's often the question that I will ask clients, or even that I'll ask myself is, so I would ask Izzy, okay, not in this group, I just ask him one-on-one. If he asked me to help him with this, I would say, so you're pretty sure of yourself, and I get that, but what if there's another explanation? What if you are denying something? What if there's a blind spot that you're purposely not looking at because you are trying to preserve your own self-esteem? What is it that would be there? So let's just assume that there's something you're in denial of. What would that be? Because if you just look around in your perceptions and say, well, I don't see anything, I don't see any reason to refute the way I think about this, well, that doesn't give you the opportunity to look behind the curtain. You have to start to wonder, okay, if there's something behind, you can't see behind the curtain is the point. So you have to wonder, well, if there is something behind the curtain, I guess it would look something like this. And then often the first thing you think of, or the first few things you think of, one of them is actually probably what is actually behind the curtain. Because why do those things occur to us? It's, we're sort of aware of it. It's subconscious. It comes to the fore if we kind of look. So it's important that we all do this, because not only for other people, but primarily for ourselves. For me, for example, some of the best things that I have done in my life, some of the most selfish things that I've done for me, is acknowledging that I fucked up and there's no other way to put it. That I just made a choice that I knew was probably bad and I did it anyway. And that still doesn't make me a bad person, because everyone does that, but I did it, and it's no excuse. I did that thing. I made that mistake. I had that lie, or I shoved that thing under the rug, or I dropped that responsibility. What's the term? I dropped the ball. Because I just didn't feel like doing it. That sort of thing. And that acknowledgement gives me the selfish opportunity to get to know myself such that I can get my needs met. And maybe as a secondary thing, I can apologize to people. So I think we're seeing that with Izzy.
I mean, if that was your truth, that was fine. I will say Izzy has apologized in person a year ago. He knew the way that he acted that night was not.
I wonder if that apology was, he's looking at Stacy. So then we wonder if his apology to Johnny was a lot nicer, which you could imagine, but he's performing for Stacy because he either subconsciously is trying to impress her or actually trying to impress her, or Izzy was trying to get with Johnny. That's another possibility, that they were in contact with each other, or they're just reaching out to each other. I don't know.
Yes. So I do commend you for apologizing. Other people have not apologized.
You mentioned the very strong attraction that you and Izzy had. And I think everyone kind of wants to know, did the two of you ever reconnect after all of this?
Another data point regarding Stacy, her rolling her eyes and saying, there's no way I'm going to apologize to you, is another data point, another tick in the column of someone that has either a very hard time or has an inability to admit when they're wrong. I don't know, but given what we saw, it's just, especially the way everything panned out, it wouldn't be hard for Stacy to say at least something in the direction of what Izzy said. I mean, what Izzy said was a pretty, mostly a non-apology, but he did say he was an asshole. And, so Stacy could have said, and she said she was being petty. So of the three of them, she said she was being petty, definitely petty. He said he was an asshole. And Stacy could say a similar thing. She'd be like, yeah, I went a little too far, but I still stand by the things I was saying. You know, something that wouldn't be great, but it would be something. And that's a red flag. And I don't use that term lightly. I don't use that term very often because it's thrown around a lot. In my anecdotal experience, 98% of the time that I hear someone talking about a red flag, I think, I don't know if that's such a great rule to live by. You know, people will say something like, well, about Johnny. People might say, oh, well, Johnny has a track record of very chaotic relationships with people who suffer from addiction and one person died. That's a red flag. You're thinking, what red flag are you talking about? It might be, maybe, but just that detail doesn't point in any direction. There's an opportunity to ask more questions. It could be a red flag, but it also might not be. So anyway, my point is that when someone can't admit that they're wrong, big red flag. And one of the major, if not perhaps the only box that I would recommend people have in the beginning of a dating trial with someone is, and not just can they admit when they're wrong, because that's perhaps easier to do in some context, right? But particularly, can they admit that they did something wrong to you in the relationship, right? That they disappointed you or hurt your feelings or something. Can they admit it, at least kind of? Because for most people, they have a hard time, like the way Izzy did it. Most people, even the healthiest people at the healthier end of the common bell curve spectrum, it's still pretty hard in my gauge of things. I have a pretty high expectation, not expectation, but there's a lot of room to grow, even for the most healthiest of people in my culture. So for those people, it's just like, well, at least they're able to admit it, kind of like the way that Izzy did. I think that that's not a red flag because there's some room to grow there and there's some opportunity there. But someone like Stacy, you know, in the track record that we saw in the show, it is, because that big fight that they had, right after the barbecue, you could argue that was all Stacy's fault. Who knows? But Stacy was a big instigator, and it's almost like she was looking for a fight in a way, because they didn't come home fighting. He was just pretty intoxicated talking about Johnny, and she was sniping at him, and he was defending himself and digging his hole deeper. And then, it led to him in the closet crying, and maybe she was sweet to him. I think she was. And the next day she was sweet, but he approached her and he apologized to her. And I think she might have apologized too, but point is that I don't know about Stacy. Maybe she's fine. We only see a snippet of her life in a very weird context. But if you're dating someone or you are in a long-term relationship with someone and you're starting to wonder, is this good for me or not? One of the things, if not the most important thing to think about, is this factor. Now, the other thing is that for a lot of people, when you test your partner, so to speak, or there's an opportunity for your partner to admit that they made a mistake or they did something wrong and it hurt your feelings, sometimes it's they have the capacity to actually admit it, but given your dynamic, it's really hard for them to admit it. So for you, if you're trying to find out if your partner is capable of that, you might come at them in a really hostile, accusatory way, which causes them to go back on their heels, and then they clam up, even though they have the capacity to actually apologize. So it's not just that they're not apologizing. It could depend on the way you're coming at them, is the point. So, but it's a very important quality to have, and one that can be improved for most people. Okay, well, I want to remind everyone that we have merch. If you want to click the links below, the holiday seasons are coming up. So if you want to get that for yourself or someone else, you can buy some merch. We have shirts and we have mugs and other kind of stuff. We have a new shirt that Stacy designed. It says, "Yikes, yikes, yikes." Triple yikes. I like the shirt, actually. Anyway, it's a great shirt. When she showed the design to me, I cackled. And you can also get a cameo from me. Also, holidays is a time when a lot of people want a cameo for Happy Holidays or Happy Thanksgiving or Happy Halloween or Happy Hanukkah or Happy New Year, Happy Birthday, whatever. Happy, happy, happy. Or just a little note to someone of goodwill, good wishes. Just, you could some people even do that for themselves. There's like, hey, I'd like a cameo for me because I just would like a little pick me up today or something. I don't know. I usually am clamoring as to what I'm going to say. I don't know what to say in those situations, but, I usually say something. And everyone out there, please take care of yourself because you deserve it. You really, really do.